Hey y'all, and welcome back. Sorry I've been away for a little bit. Life just kind of caught up with me, and then with this snowstorm that we had up here in Jersey recently, kind of set me back a little bit. I mean, yeah, did all the shoveling, and I know this was a few days ago, but I just really was not in the mood after all these snowstorms to do much of anything. I apologize, but I'll just tell it to y'all straight. Hey, having to sit there and work a full-time job, deal with life in general, and also having to deal with this snowstorm, I was not, I'll be honest with y'all, I was not really feeling like doing much of anything else after that, if y'all know what I mean. So, well, I'm back, and I got a few things I'm gonna do. I'm getting tired of these slapped hand videos. Everything constantly the same. Debunk this. This person maybe did a little bit of good editing, so it's a little tougher to figure out everything. And it's just the same old, rinse, lather, and repeat. So, yeah, it's not as fun as his videos used to be back in the day. I mean, they used to have, y'all know of another channel called Watch Mojo. It was kind of somewhat quasi-similar to that back in the day. I mean, if any of y'all watched any of the older slapped hams, y'all know what I'm talking about. But now it's just, like I say, rinse, lather, repeat. Same old. The videos ain't too much different than the previous video. The only thing different is locations and the people in it. Let's be 100% honest. So, give a little thanks to person on here named Jeff D, who actually did comment in the comment section. Now, y'all, I told y'all, if y'all didn't want to hear any more of this, just leave it in the comments below, because I do have other ideas now. But you know what, Mr. Jeff D sat there and did leave comments, and I will say I thank you for that, just simply because I myself felt just a little kind of, stagnant with everything, just a little bit. So I wanted to change it up a little bit, and it got me to thinking. I'm like, what am I going to do? I do have original stories, because in my spare time, I do like to write fiction, and just as a little creative outlet for me. But I'm trying to still work out how I'm going to do those precisely, because the way I have that set up, it's kind of more of not exactly just individual stories, but they kind of create a whole nother story in itself, if y'all know what I mean. So I'm trying to get some of that written out a little bit more, and because I'll be honest with you, I did do a lot of them, banged out a lot of those short stories, but for it to encompass and create a whole giant story within it as well, that's a little tougher to kind of navigate those waters, and very time consuming. So what I thought I would do for y'all, I know this is a long intro, but I'm wrapping it up soon. But what I thought I'd do for y'all is some stories I have of some local legends, and also maybe some cryptids that some of y'all didn't ever hear about. Some of the ones that are more obscure and maybe more rooted in more of the Native Americans that were in the southeast region of the United States, because one of the biggest areas of Georgia, in the mountain area of like Georgia, Tennessee, and North Carolina, is specifically this area called Cherokee County. Sorry, I apologize. Cherokee County. That was actually where the Cherokee tribes had came from originally, and that area is just steeped in a lot of their folklore and everything, and it's something that not a lot of people know too much of, especially some of the things they have. I mean, everybody knows of the Algonquin myths and folklore of the Wendigo, as well as the Navajo legends of the Skinwalkers. But a lot of people don't know much of some of the other ones, because in Georgia there was a lot of the Cherokee, the Creek, the Muskogee, And you also had a little bit in the very further south, closest to Florida and everything, was the Seminole tribes. And they have their own folklores and legends and everything. And I want to go and dive into those. But today, I thought I would do a local legend that I grew up with. And I thought it was pretty interesting. So I thought I'd share it with y'all. And I will say, not only is it a legend, but it's something I had seen myself. So I thought, why not share it with y'all? So just sit back, relax. There's nothing for y'all to see. Just hear the sound of my voice and let's get started. Now, this story happened, good grief, many years ago. Back when I was in high school, about around the same time as the last two stories I had told y'all about, but a different road. It's a different rural road than the one the other two stories happened on. But it did happen when I was coming back home from a basketball game. Now, I know I should have stopped playing basketball after the first two, but it happens, right? But anyway, just wanted to give a little background of when this happened. You know, there was always this little story when I was growing up about this local family plot that was out in the middle of a field pretty close to where I grew up and everything. And, you know, we don't know the full details of the whole legend of like as the why to of this happening, but every night around midnight, there was this flame that popped up in the middle of this family plot that was pretty small. I'd say maybe 10 headstones there. Maybe there might be a little more buried there, but didn't have a headstone for it. But I digress anyway. But it was a little bitty family plot out in the middle of this big field. And normally, like the farmer who owned it would either plant like peanuts, cotton, something pretty small that actually wouldn't cover the bramble that had become that family plot due to basic years of neglect. Because before the current owner of that field had purchased it, the family that had owned it prior had no living relatives, so it was basically kind of up for the market and everything. And so during those years that nobody had owned it, the family plot had went into neglect and everything. So, you know, they tried to keep it as clean as possible so it didn't look too crazy and all, but there was some things that they just couldn't do, like take out the trees and everything that were there, but they cut them down so it wasn't too bad. But you had kind of mid-sized root systems and things like that they didn't want to disturb the gravesite proper, but they kept it as clean as they could, you know. Anyway, I'm getting a little too much on the descriptions there, but the legend of it always went that around midnight a flame would appear in the middle of this field, in the middle of a family plot. And nobody really knew the reasonings behind it. It was just always stated within the community that this was what happened. So, you know, you always hear stuff like that, but you know, I never had passed through at midnight, so I had never seen it personally until one day I'm driving home, like I said, from a basketball game and everything. And yeah, I did not want to take the other road. If you don't know the reasons why I didn't want to take the other road, I have little stories going on that say rural roads are terrifying. I did a little reaction to a person named Mr. Spooks's video about the reasons why rural roads are terrifying. And I did my own little storytelling after, I think about a video after that. And that has the full story of the reason why I didn't want to use that road. But I digress. Let me get back to this story. And, you know, I took that road and I was like, let me just let me just see. It's close to midnight. I'm gonna see. So I kind of slowed down, took my time. Reasons to take my time anyway, because it was wintertime, and we do have a lot of white-tailed deer in South Georgia, so I didn't want to take any chances with one of them being a hood ornament. So I was going slow, and then it hit midnight. And by the time it hit midnight, I was pretty even with the cemetery itself. And it was a dark new moon night, real just pitch black out there. And if, like I say, if y'all been on a rural road before, you know how dark it gets. There's no lights, there's no nothing, just the darkness. And it was cloudy enough that there wasn't any stars out either to make it kind of a little more illuminated. And so, right at midnight, just right as rain, that flame popped up in the middle of that field. And it spooked me because, I had that story in the back of my head and everything, and just never had seen it before. And to see something like that, you kind of startle yourself a little bit, because it's like, what the hell did that come from? And so I kind of pushed it a little faster to get home and hightailed it out of there, because I didn't know what was going to go on, and I didn't know if maybe somebody was out there, like, going around doing something, and if they saw somebody kind of slowly driving through, they might think something was suspicious, right? So I hurried on home and got in my room and started getting ready for bed. And I started thinking, and I'm like, well, there's a lot of times they got irrigation systems set up and everything like that, and these were the new. I considered them new at the time. I mean, this was early 2000s. They were the ones that have the wheels and the big arching ones. We didn't ever have too many of those. Growing up for me, we always had this one that kind of had this big old hose that would come out of a big old reel for our irrigation system. And you had to actually pull, think of it as like a big old giant sprinkler, right? Where it only had the one nozzle that would rotate around, and basically what it would do is we would pull that part out with the tractor, and when you turn it on, the wheel would rotate and kind of basically pull it right back into itself. So you didn't need that overarching kind of like aluminum type that had the wheels that would spin around and could cover large areas, because this one would just go backwards and, get the whole of the field. And so I was thinking maybe that they had that set up, and that's where the water system they had set up was there, and they could just turn it on and do things like that. And maybe that's what the light was for. Or that maybe there was a shed, like a tool shed that they had to make it easier if the tractor broke down and they didn't have to go too far away to get parts and pieces, right? Those were thoughts that came into my head before I went to bed, and very logical thinking. So I just, thought nothing of it until I'd say maybe about a month later. And I actually had an opportunity to go to a friend of mine's house. And we were both on the basketball team together. And one good thing about it was her parents owned that field, right? And so we were hanging out for the day. We sat there and practiced basketball because her parents had a poured concrete like area where they would put their vehicles and all, and they had set up her a basketball goal on that, and mine was just basically all on the dirt and everything, so there was no real way to practice dribbling very well, or also moves and everything, because holes and all that other stuff would kind of make the basketball go a little bit everywhere, so you couldn't really practice very well. But with the poured concrete, it was perfect. And we were out there for several hours, and then we went and had some snacks and everything and sat down and watched some TV. And I was telling her about what I saw when I was coming home from the basketball game one day, and she was like, oh, No, there's nothing there. And I was like, oh, come on. There's got to be something. Your daddy might have something set up over there for the irrigation. She's like, no, I promise you, that's not where it is. And she goes, if you don't believe me, let's go. And before I could even say anything, she's pulling at my arm and dragging me to my vehicle so we could take the drive over there. Because I would say, even though this field was right behind the house, it was still a mile and a half away from the house itself to where we needed to go. So she's like, come on, let's go. I'm going to show you. We're going to put this to rest right now. I'm going to show you, and then you're going to have to believe me. And so I said, okay. We went. She pointed the way of the road that would get me to where we needed to go. And so we're driving and everything, and she goes, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you. I said, okay, I believe you. You don't have to, I'm just trying to calm her down a little bit because she got really animated when I suggested that there had to be something there that turned on the light, right? And she goes, no, come on. I got to show you. You won't believe anything until I show you. I said, okay. I kept on going. We're sitting there real quiet in the car and everything. And I'm sitting there thinking in my head, there's got to be something. It's going to be a big old joke because, honestly, she was a practical jokester and everything. So there was a lot of jokes she would always do. Everything was funny, right? She was one of those type of people, always laughing and wanting to pull pranks on people and everything like that. And I'm thinking in my head, this is what is going to happen. And I'm preparing for some sort of little prank or something, right? Y'all have to know some people like that. I mean, I can't be the only one who's known several people like this. I mean, if y'all know any of those people, let me know in the comments below because you'll know exactly what the type of person I'm talking about. But anyway, we're sitting there. She keeps on going and going about it and everything like that. And so she was like, oh, my sister said, my brother said, and, just going along. Okay. So we finally get there. And she's like, no, drive a little bit closer because since her daddy hadn't set up and plowed that field, it's nice and hard packed dirt a little bit more than what it would have been during the spring and summer. So I go over towards it a little bit more, and sure enough, there is nothing there. No well set up for the irrigation systems. There was no shed that I was thinking of that could have been there. Absolutely no source of electricity that could produce a light there. Nor was there anything that could, gas lines or anything like that would have like a little propane light flame. Y'all know how boilers and hot water heaters, you got the pilot lights and things like that, especially in old electric stoves. You know how there's always like a light going on. That's what it kind of reminded me of when I saw it, except it was orange when I first saw it, and big. So, there was nothing that could produce what I had seen all those nights prior. And I'm just sitting there staring. And I'm like, this has got to be a joke. Somebody had to be coming out here. And she's like, no. Only thing here is the rest of the trees that my parents didn't want to pull up because they didn't want to mess with the graves, and the headstones. That's it. And I was like, well, what caused it? And she's like, I don't know. It happens every night and around midnight. Doesn't last very long, and it's happened all the time. We don't know exactly the reason why this happened. Nobody said anything. It's just that this happens, and that's that. No little legend into like somebody passing away with like vengeance or needing to have some sort of retribution or anything like that. Nothing like that. It's just that this happens. There's no other explanation. Just it happens. We don't know why, but it happens. And so when I was looking, I didn't see like any other source that could cause something like that. You know how like people talk about swamp gas making lights and all that other stuff. There was nothing like that. It's a field. It's a regular field that you would spot anywhere in the world that has farms, right? There's no water source. There was nothing. It was just trees, like basically stumps of trees and high grass and gravestones. That was it. And so we go and we take the longer way back. We go back through to the road that I would go to get to my house, and we took the long way around so we could just talk about what we had seen and everything. And she's like, "Oh, you believe me now?" I was like, "Well, I didn't see anything that could cause it, so yeah, I guess." So I said, "When?" And she's like, I was about to start talking, and she was like, "You know, my sisters actually went with a group of friends to see it, right? And see what was going on. They all wanted to investigate and know more, just kind of like you did, but they went at night so they could see when the light pops up." And I was like, "Okay, and what happened?" And she started telling me all the people who went and how they got in the vehicles and they drove there about around, I'd say maybe 11:30 or something, so they could get in there in plenty enough time, because when it's dark and you have to be extra careful on those roads, because you don't want it like when it's raining, you don't want to go into the softer dirt compared to the hard packed dirt. And so they were taking the time. They got there maybe a few minutes before midnight, and they hunkered down and waited with the flashlights in hand. And about around midnight, the flame lit up. And so, of course, a few of the bolder ones, which one of them was actually a girl that was in the same grade as me, because my friend from the basketball team, she was a freshman. I couldn't think almost for a moment. Oh my goodness, it's been too long. She was a freshman while I was a senior. So her friend, the friend to her sister, was a senior also, and we had several classes together. She decided that she was going to go and investigate. Like, okay, this light came on just as predictable as waking up every morning, basically. And so she went and decided to walk. Her and some other guy, I can't remember the names because it's been a long time. I don't want to say too long, but like I said, early 2000s. It was, yeah, about right with all of it. So that's been a long time. So my memory with names is pretty bad because I've met so many people along the way. And so those two went and investigated. They got the flashlights ready so they could see, so they don't trip over a hole or anything like that. But when they got, I would say, within 15 feet of this flame, it suddenly got bigger and actually chased them out of the little family plot. And she couldn't remember who in the story had fell, but one of them had failed and the flame shot past them, like just chased down the other one. And I'm thinking in my head, okay, yeah, trying to prank me again, right? You're just trying to, I know I see nothing there and you were right about that, but this is seeming a little too far-fetched. Now, this was before I had too many experiences of my own. I'm thinking I've had little things here and there with the paranormal, but nothing this crazy. This just sounded something straight up out of a movie. And so I just, the yesing her to death until she got finished with the story. And, also making sure that I'm believing her. I was like, yeah, And we make it back to her house. By that time, I'm needing to get home because I had something to do and everything I think I might have had some chores I needed to get done from my parents before they had got home and everything. So I went and didn't think too much about it until I went back to school. And I'd say that happened. It had to be a few days after, because I can like I said, names escape me, but the story is still remains. And so, I go back to school, and I actually had a couple of classes with the girl that was from the story she had told me. And I was like, you know what? Nothing like asking her. So I just asked her. I said, hey, I heard about this, that y'all went over to the family plot to go and investigate about the flame. And she's like, oh, you heard that? Well, let me show you. Let me show you. And inside her book bag, because it was hot. It was, it's still cool, but it was hot inside the school. So she put her jacket in her book bag. And she goes, I want to show you something. Because I told her everything that the other girl had told me and everything. So, she was like, let me just show you. She pulls the jacket out of the book bag. And on the back, pretty much dead center of her jacket, was a hole. Kind of reminded me almost like a cigarette burn. Y'all know how it goes. Like, it's like almost like a nearly quasi-perfect circle. Like if somebody hits you with their cigarette accidentally being too close to you and everything, and it ends up kind of burning a hole. Y'all know how it's almost like a perfect circle, and then the edges are singed, so there's no strings or no nothing coming out. It's nice and like it's a brown, like almost wax sealed, right? Especially according to the material of your clothing. But it's bigger than, say, like a cigarette burn. This was probably about 3 times bigger than, like, say, a regular cigarette burn, but it had the same markings right in the middle. And she goes, yeah, I was the one who fell, and this is what happened to my jacket. And I'm just staring. I mean, I had nothing to say. She didn't, like I said, the other person was a prankster. I thought maybe, well, she's just telling me a tale and everything, and my friend at school was just gonna clean up everything. And no, she don't. It was something stupid and everything. But no, she sat there. She told me, no, everything she said, 100% right, and here's proof. So yeah. This was one little story. I got plenty more stories. I'm sorry if this seems everywhere and that there was more than one story being told at the time, but I felt y'all needed a little bit more of all of the story than me piecing this into like different episodes, because then I feel like would get a little bit more confusing. But that was the story of that little family plot. It was a local legend. Nobody really knew too much about it, but just knew that every day around midnight this flame would come on. That was it. Everybody knew that part. Nobody knows the real details of it. And honestly, I can't. Those headstones are so old that you can't really read the names on them and everything. So I would try to do some more research onto it. Maybe I can team up with somebody who's a local over there who might know a little bit more about the family that lived there. And maybe I can get y'all some more information on that aspect of it. But other than that, it was the weirdest legend I've ever had. Normally they always have some sort of story behind the legends of it, but this one, it was just every night without fail a light come on, and everybody just knew that was just like it was a light that kind of guarded that cemetery. But other than that, nobody knew the full facts and details of it. But hopefully I can get more information for y'all, and I just hope y'all enjoyed this little story time. I got a few more stories I'm going to sit here and try to wrap up for y'all and get set up, so I hope y'all enjoy them, and until next time.